Good morning. My name is Jana Charette, and I am Canada's High Commissioner to the United Kingdom, and it is my pleasure to welcome all of you today to this webinar on artificial intelligence. Pour ceux qui nous rejoignent depuis l'Europe, bon après-midi, mais à vous autres, bonjour à nos participants en Amérique du Nord. Je m'appelle Jana Charette, je suis la haute commissaire pour le Canada ici au Royaume-Uni. C'est un grand plaisir pour moi de vous accueillir aujourd'hui. Je souhaite tout particulièrement la bienvenue à nos intervenants. So I really want to especially welcome and thank our speakers for being with us this afternoon. I'll introduce them now. So I'll start with Dr. Inmar Giovanni, our featured speaker, who is the Director of Engineering at Uber Advanced Technologies. Good afternoon, Dr. Giovanni, excuse me. And then we have Georgia Hanias. Georgia, who we are fortunate to have as our moderator for the proceedings this afternoon, today, is a tech expert and a former broadcaster. And I'm going to have a bit more to say about both of them in a minute. And after we go through our Q&A session, I'm delighted that Nilu Baroon, who's the Executive Director of the Consider Canada Cities Alliance, is going to speak to us for a few minutes about the different AI strengths in various cities in Canada and the links with other industry clusters. So I personally am very keen to hear about the path that Inmar, can I call you Inmar, is that all right? Great. Inmar has taken throughout her career in the AI space in Canada, and to learn from her insights and her experience. Inmar and Nilu have generously agreed to record short presentations that'll have more facts and figures in them on AI in Canada. And we're going to be sharing those more detailed presentations with you after this event. So think of them as your take-home gift. Inmar's presentation includes some fantastic original artwork that really goes a long way, I think, to demystifying AI and machine learning, in addition to bringing you some real insights into her experience. Now, our viewers for this session today come from a wide range of industries, which I believe really speaks to the broad potential of AI and the incredible pace at which AI is being adopted across different industry sectors. I recognize that some of your companies are already very active in the Canadian market, while others of you may be thinking about exploring Canada for the very first time. My team and I are very hopeful that you will find this webinar offers you food for thought on the opportunities for the use of AI, tools in your own business practices and processes, and how Canada's existing and growing strengths in AI can support your commercial objectives. There have been several Canadian expansion announcements by global companies recently that you may have heard about. Companies such as Behavox, Facebook, Samsung, General Motors, IBM, Microsoft, DeepMind, and HSBC, just to name a few. And they have all opened AI labs in Canada. Now, this is not a coincidence. Canada has, albeit quietly and modestly in our way, we have been at the forefront of AI development for decades now, with research leadership in deep and reinforcement learning for over 30 years. I think of early pioneers in this space, like Jeffrey Hinton at the University of Toronto, of Yoshua Bengio at the Université de Montréal, and Richard Sutton at the University of Alberta. People like these three amazing AI folks have all built our deep research capacity in data analytics, which we know is really the foundation for AI as we see it today. Beyond these centers, AI clusters have grown really across Canada, from coast to coast to coast, with over 800 AI companies. And hundreds of other Canadian technology companies are integrating AI into their solutions and into the services that they're offering for their clients and customers. Canada's AI industry is supported by government initiatives and by funding at both the federal and provincial levels. For instance, the Canadian Institute for Advanced Research, CIFAR as we call it, is leading the government's $125 million pan-Canadian artificial intelligence strategy for research and for talent. And this complements a $950 million innovation superclusters initiative, which includes the Montreal-based AI supercluster, which is focused on supply chain and scale.ai. In May of 2019, the Government of Canada also announced the creation of an advisory council for AI, co-chaired by Yoshua Bengio and the Royal Bank of Canada's Chief Science Officer, Fontini Agrafati. I'm delighted, though, that we have others with us today who can speak to their own personal experience in this industry in Canada, and that includes, of course, Inmar and Georgia. Je suis heureuse d'accueillir les deux avec nous aujourd'hui. I'm going to start with a little bit more introduction, though. First on Inmar. Inmar is the Director of Engineering, as I said earlier, at Uber Advanced Technologies Group. In this role, she leads a team that focuses on cutting-edge deep learning models for self-driving vehicles. Prior to joining Uber, Inmar worked at Microsoft Research, Altera, which is now Intel, Kobo, and Kindred at roles ranging from research scientist to VP Big Data, applying machine learning techniques to various problem domains and taking concepts all the way from research through to production systems. She's an inventor with several patents to her name and has authored numerous top-tier academic publications in the areas of machine learning, computer vision, computational biology. She is also a prolific, and if I might say, Inmar, a very engaging and an accessible public speaker, an active volunteer who mentors and builds communities in the tech and machine learning ecosystems with a focus on women in STEM. In 2018, Inmar was recognized as one of Canada's 50 inspiring women in STEM, and in 2019, she received a Tech Titans Award. She received her PhD in computer science in 2011 from the University of Toronto, specializing in machine learning, and was a visiting scholar at the University of Cambridge. So a very warm welcome to you, Inmar. Inmar is going to be interviewed by Georgia Hanyas. Georgia is a media consultant and a diversity champion who is based here in London. Georgia has served as a financial technology and a diversity specialist for the UK Department for International Trade, and was formerly the head of global communications at Innovate Finance, which is a membership association for the UK's international fintech sector. Georgia has worked as a writer and as a broadcaster here in the UK, as well as in Canada, for a variety of media outlets, including Canadian Press and the New Internationalist. So please, everybody, join me in welcoming Inmar and Georgia to our session today.
On Friday in our virtual session. You are truly one of the most influential people working in the AI and deep learning space at the moment. And in a world where it's well documented that there is a scarcity of women among machine learning researchers and computer science, you have risen to get to a position in your career where you're truly playing a key role in shaping our AI future, a role that is undoubtedly inspirational to both men and women in your sector. And you've achieved this not in Silicon Valley, the world's perceived innovation hub of all things tech, but in Canada. You're currently helping to make the dream of self-driving cars a reality. Chief engineer at the Uber Advanced Technology Group. I mean, the company's self-driving transportation lab in Toronto is so important for Uber. It's the only self-driving lab outside the US, and it's the only one that's dedicated to building what they call the brain box for the company's self-driving fleet. So it's a really, really strategic investment for Uber, and you're at the helm of it. Now, this is truly cutting edge stuff. I'm a big fan of the idea of having a self-driving car, and I'm sure there's a lot of people like me as well, especially those who can't parallel park in the UK. But of course, when you came to Canada from Israel in 2005, when you completed your degree in computer science, Uber didn't exist. And I don't think you would have foreseen back then the role that you're playing today. So what inspired you to come to Canada? And in particular, why did you choose the University of Toronto to pursue your PhD in machine learning?
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, well, first of all, just hello, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to speak today. Thank you, Janice, for the introduction and Georgia for the opportunity. I want to pull a fast one. And just before we start, I'll answer your question. I'm happy to. I love the bookshelves that you all have. And I also wanted to do something that, as someone who came to Canada, I think really means a lot to me. And also, Canadian Thanksgiving is coming up. So one of the things that we try to do here in formal events is to do the language acknowledgement and to just respect the people who have been here before. So I just want to quickly read. So we acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. And it's now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, Métis, and Métis people. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13, signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit, and the Williams Treaties, signed with the multiple Mississaugas and Chippewa bands. So just to acknowledge where we are today. Okay, and now let's dive into why did I come to Canada? So I was interested in pursuing a graduate degree in AI because as part of my undergraduate degree, when I still wanted to originally do neuroscience, but I couldn't quite see myself fitting in, and I took a machine learning course and I really, really loved it. And so I decided that rather than try to understand the human brain, I might try to build brains. And I was going to do that in Israel, actually, which has a really fantastic research system at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. But I had some of my own personal interest in Toronto. And I asked who was supposed to be my supervisor in Israel, how is the machine learning, kind of like, by the way, how is the machine learning research in Toronto? And he said, oh, well, it's one of the top schools in the world, probably one of the top 3, which came as a complete surprise to me. But then I did come here and I learned that University of Toronto, as well as other universities, have these incredible teams of researchers, probably the largest, in terms of, of course, there are many great universities all over the world, but if you look at how many rock star kind of researchers they had, every department might have 1 or 2 or 3, whereas the University of Toronto, and we're talking 2004, had 5 or 6 people who were all very well known and kind of top caliber, including Jeff Hinton that we spoke of and others. And this is true until today. So, it's only, I think, grown with all of these institutes that have been formed more recently to allow for even more people to come and to create these communities of researchers that are working together towards creating more, more AI assets and researching it. Oh, sorry, you're muted.
Yeah. So what attracted these luminaries to the University of Toronto, and what is attracting all of these big name global companies that have set up AI labs in Canada? As we mentioned, we've got Uber, we've got DeepMind, Facebook, they're all plowing into Canada, they're setting up AI labs. Yeah. So what do you think is sort of the secret sauce to Canada? And really, why should an AI company of any size choose to come to Canada to grow their operations? I mean, what's setting Canada apart from other competitive tech hubs, whether it be, right, Silicon Valley, Cambridge, London, or even Shanghai?
So let's start with the academic circle. So for a student coming to Toronto and many other Canadian universities is it's favorable in terms of, first of all, like funding, because almost all Canadian universities basically will provide you with a stipend for doing your graduate studies. And so you don't have to worry about funding your own PhD. And then specifically in AI, since we have these centers of excellence, a student might want to be part of that. And of course, we have thousands of people applying every year. Immigration in general is easy compared to other countries, both as a student to try and get your study permit, as well as if you're coming to work. So Canada actually has one of the fastest turnaround for bringing in international immigration. It can be as little as 2 weeks if you're a company and you have some international talent that you want to bring in. And of course, it's a very diverse place that allows for many different people to come. So a lot of the restrictions concerns that some people from some countries might face don't exist in Canada, which is generally very receptive for immigration. Now, there are, I think, for a company deciding to come to Canada. So one example is what happened at Uber. So at the University of Toronto, we had Professor Raquel Urtasun, who is one of the world's leaders in deep learning, computer vision, and self-driving. She was doing it in the academic domain. And Uber wanted to basically build an R&D lab for AI for self-driving cars. And they reached out to her and they said, we'd like to have you come and be our chief scientist, lead our self-driving AI initiative. And she said, sure, as long as I can do it here. And so the talent is often, the labs are often built around some professor or some researcher who is well known. And this is the case for a lot of the labs that we see here. So NVIDIA, Facebook, Google AI, DeepMind, they're all kind of centered around one or several researchers that just do the top work in the world. And so that's the incentive for a lot of companies to do that. But even for smaller ones, like a small business that wants to get started in Canada, it's practically speaking, it's really easy to set a business in Canada. It's something that can take, I think, as little as a couple of days to just, initialize a business. Then, of course, if you want to start some AI-centric operation, you need the AI talent. And as we said, there is like this ecosystem here. There are these communities of researchers that then graduate and so on. And the other thing that is actually important to remember is you need, in addition to people who are experts in AI, you need people who have really good expertise in software engineering. And this is something that people often forget when they think about the problem, because one of the things that I love doing is being at this sweet spot between research and production, like taking these really, really cool technologies that we can demonstrate as like a small demo, but really making it run on a self-driving car, in real life. That's where a lot of the challenge with using AI is. And so to do that, you need really strong software engineering. And Canada also has a lot of incredibly good software engineering schools. I'll just call out one example, which is the University of Waterloo, which has students who go through this co-op program where every 4 months they spend 4 months working in industry. So by the time they graduate, they have more than a year worth of experience, and they are so good. It's like incredible how talented these folks are. We just finished, interviewing our batch of interns that are going to come to the lab in January, and they go all over the world. But that's the talent pool comes from here.
Excellent. So that is really important to note. There is, in addition to having the visa program for skilled workers, where you can bring talent to Canada within 2 weeks, you also have that local talented workforce that a lot of countries don't have. So Canada is the most educated country in all of the OECD. And having grown up in Canada and spent many years now living in London, there's a respect towards those that pursue careers, engineering, software engineering, that wasn't necessarily there here in the UK initially, but at least not 20 years ago when I came. Now things are changing. We have more of an entrepreneurial tech sector that's emerged here in the UK. But what's interesting in Canada is that we've had that for such a long time, and AI in Canada continues to grow. We've got a lot of investment that's pouring into the sector and thousands of jobs that have been created over the past decade. But also, would you say that a lot of this talent is also staying in Canada? They can choose to go elsewhere, but like you as well, you have one of the greatest minds in AI. You came to Toronto, you did your PhD, you could have gone to Silicon Valley, could have gone elsewhere, but you decided to stay. So why do you think so many people stay in Canada to pursue their AI careers?
So Canada, I know it from personal experience, but also from, like official numbers, it's one of the best places in the world to live. It's just from a social perspective, the diversity and the patience for diversity, the acceptance of different people from different places. I think our lab is a great example. We have 60 people overall in the lab. The leadership, which is Raquel, who is my boss, myself, our technical project managers, we all moved to Canada and decided to stay there. And that's true for many people in the lab. Most of them moved to Canada as adults, as young adults, and have decided to make it their permanent home. Part of it is, of course, as I said, it's a lovely place to live in. It also is an accessible place to live in the sense that you can become a Canadian citizen based on, so if you have the skill, if you are able to come here as a skilled worker, then you can apply for a permanent resident status, and then you will within a number of years become a Canadian citizen. And so I think for many people from around the world, that is, that's a great driving reason to remain here.
Yeah.
And it's also like if you're in tech specifically, and I've noticed it from a personal perspective, seeing how in the last decade or so there is this really blooming community of startups and small businesses that are starting everywhere. So right now, I think Toronto is the #1 city in the world for AI-based startups, and so I can see this ecosystem getting built and how much excitement there is, and so people are interested in coming to Canada to be part of all of these initiatives. And then there's a lot of support mechanism in place. So for example, we have quite a few incubators that are worldwide known for companies to come in and go through the incubator process. I'm part of some of them as a mentor. So, we work with startups and help them with, say, their AI strategy, right? Or if they want more support in that, we have these big research institutions that are very collaborative. So they work a lot with this ecosystem, right? So for example, Vector or Mila or Amy, they all have programs that will coach executives on, what is AI strategy. They have training programs for, say, someone in software engineering who wants to ramp up on their AI capacity. So there is that type of support that's also really exciting to see how it kind of grew over the last decade or so.
Yeah, and that is very important. It's that collaboration you touched on, and the very fact that a lot of the innovation is industry-led. So there's a lot of collaboration, with researchers, institutions, and businesses. Because one of the biggest criticisms of computer science degrees is that they're not fit for purpose. People spend 4 years doing a degree, and then they're not ready for industry. They don't have those skills. So the fact you've got that fantastic internship and these students can actually go in and actually have an idea in terms of what industry wants, and learning how to deliver that, I think, is very important. And what you touched on is so true about the inclusive, nurturing environment, that it really encapsulates what Canada is all about. And what I really like about Canada is that there's an opportunity for someone to have a very rich, exciting AI career, because AI is possible. This career prospect is possible across the nation. So you're spoiled for choice in terms of your career prospects, because you've got these super clusters from Alberta, Toronto, Montreal. You don't necessarily have to leave your hometown to actually contribute on a global scale AI's advancement. So I think that's very unique. It's very hard to get that right in a lot of nations. And Canada seems to be doing a really good job with that. And you're right, Toronto has the highest concentration of AI startups in the world. Montreal also has a very high concentration, I think the highest concentration of researchers and students of deep learning in the world. So there's a lot of firsts for Canada as well. Now, we don't have that much time, and I really want to talk about your work with Uber as being a chief engineer. But first, I just want to highlight how important this driverless transportation lab is to Uber. So the company started this division, I think, about 5 years ago, with the belief that this business is going to bring in about 70% more revenue. This idea of having, cars that don't require human drivers. So this lab, strategically, from a business perspective, is very important and very lucrative if you're able to get it right for them. I also think, as you touched on, having a diverse and nurturing team leading the labs, it's yourself and two other formidable women. I think that helps Uber to rehabilitate its image and its reputation, which has been badly damaged in the past. So what is it like to advance and lead the R&D group of a large global company like Uber in Canada? And talk a bit about how you've managed to clearly, differentiate Uber's proprietary tech and IP while, drawing on, your research centers and universities as collaborators?
Yeah, so just because I'm a scientist and I need everything to be so precise, so I'm the director of engineering, not the chief engineer, and my boss is the head of the lab. I'm I'm the second in command. One of the most interesting things I think we do is that for the people who work at the lab, the researchers, a lot of them are actually university students who are also full-time Uber employees, which is kind of an unprecedented arrangement that we have, but that's one of the things you can make happen. And so they get the best of both worlds, in the sense that they're pursuing their PhD, they're doing research, they're publishing. So everything that we do, we publish, because we believe as a philosophy is that this technology it's beyond just Uber, right? It's something that's like, this is where we're heading in terms of transportation, and this is like a community effort in a way of research. And so every new discovery, every new innovation is published and is available for people to read and understand and see the math and see examples of how it works. So the students get the ability to do that, to engage fully as researchers, but also to be full-time paid employees of Uber with access to all the data and access to all the computing infrastructure, because all of this deep learning stuff requires a lot of computers actually to do at scale. And so we, for example, have this model, and a lot of the other AI labs will engage, maybe not in full-time employees, but like all these internships with graduate students. And what is it like? I was invited by Raquel to join the lab in order to help build exactly this unit that takes all of the stuff that she works on with her PhD students into the car. And so for me, this is like exactly what I love doing. And I got to come in and build a team. So basically I came in and I hired a team that is now, I think we have 17 people, and we're all kind of working on this together. So that was very exciting for me. And as I said, it's a super diverse team. We have people from all over the world who moved to Canada or were already in Canada, but we're considering, whether they're staying or not. Of course, Uber does support people with their application for permanent residency. So it's part of the services that Uber will provide to kind of sponsor this. And so most people are choosing to stay, which is very exciting. So we have diversity, of ethnicities, and of course also we try to very proactively work on gender diversity, because it's something that you need to be proactive about if you want to get it right. So I have all this freedom to kind of build the team and work on the technology that is exciting for me. So it's been great from that perspective.
That's amazing. And tell us a bit about. Oh, sorry. Before I continue, we're going to be turning to Q&A in just a few minutes. So if people have ideas in terms of questions to ask Inmar, you can send them over to Leslie Venon, leslie.venon@international.gc.ca. We just have a couple more minutes. I just have a few more questions that I want to ask you. I want to touch on the landscape for women in STEM in Canada, because diversity is a big issue that's still being faced in AI globally. I just want to know, how does it work for women in Canada? I mean, do you see that there are more women entering AI at the moment, and what kind of programs or nurturing is going on to help close that gender gap in the AI space?
So one of the most amazing things for me to see about the Canadian landscape is how many of our leaders in AI are women. So I'm just gonna name a few. So Janice mentioned Fatini, who is the head of RBC, and maybe you won't know it by the name, but she's a woman, the head of RBC AI group. We've got, of course, Uber, NVIDIA, which is a very important player in the AI landscape, because they make the chips that everything runs on pretty much. Their AI lab is headed by Professor Sania Fidler, also a woman, also a professor at U of T. The AI lab in Montreal is headed by Jolie Pinault. The DeepMind one is headed by Duina Prikop, and there is a pretty long list. And this is, I don't think it's unprecedented. I don't think we have another place in the world where so many of the labs are headed by women. And I find that very inspiring. and important as well, because I think one of the things that people worry about with respect to AI is bias in these systems and so on. And I think having this diversity of thought and inclusiveness by having so many different types of people and thought processes is really key to how are we actually going to deal with it in the long term. In terms of things that we try to proactively do, I think a lot of universities have programs for women in computer science. So basically, these are kind of like groups that help the women have a support network, because that's one of the things we know we often miss if it's only a single person in a class or whatnot. I am personally very involved with an initiative that is a cross-Canadian event for women in computing. So it's called the Canadian Celebration of Women in Computing, or CanQuick, which is not, it's a bit of a mouthful. And it's an annual event where basically we invite undergraduate students, graduate students, and professionals to basically engage in like a 2-day long event where they can form a community. And I started attending this just as a PhD student when it began 11 years ago. And I've been every year except for 1 year. And over the years, I've gotten more and more involved to the point where last year I was the conference chair. So we have these types of initiatives that I'm involved with. There are others, of course. So I see a lot of meetup groups for like women in AI, women in big data, and so on. Mm-hmm. And again, I think that just in general, this like mental model of diversity, of inclusiveness really helps kind of build that sense that we're not trying to build a homogeneous group of people when we tackle a technical problem, because we understand that a heterogeneous one would be better for that. And I've seen that in the places that I've worked at, and also proactively engage in trying to make it more so.
Great. And just one more question from me before we turn it to listeners. What is your top tip for any AI firm wishing to scale up in Canada? What would you advise them to do? One top tip.
For wishing to scale in Canada.
To scale up in Canada.
That's a good question. I think engaging with the local community. There are many ways of doing it, and it can be the academic one through these institutes. It can be the local startups. And I actually get often asked to have like these brief coffee chats with a company that is like, okay, we're interested in setting shop here. What can you tell us? And I do that, and I'm sure that other people do it. And I've done many like over the years. So I'm pretty sure, like I would imagine that happens a lot. And I think people here are receptive to having these types of chats and kind of sharing knowledge, sharing information, and forming these communities.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Now I'm going to turn to Leslie and see if there are any questions for Inmar. Do you have any questions from our attendees, any of our attendees? I could speak to you for hours, Inmar. If there are any questions. Maybe while I'm trying to find some questions from the attendees, I have one more question I want to ask you. I have many questions, but there's one particular I want to ask you. And that's talking about some of the challenges to working in Canada. Are there any that people should be made aware of?
Sorry, I missed that. Can you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Are there any challenges to working in Canada that people should be made aware of?
Well, I mean, I think the only one that I think of is the obvious one, which is it does get cold here in winter. So for me, it was the challenge of, okay, how do I learn to love winter? And, over the years, I've kind of found my different ways of doing that. But I will say, as someone who moved here from Israel, which as most people know is pretty hot, houses in Israel are built such that heat is not maintained. And so actually in winter, you're colder inside the house. You kind of have to wear sweaters and whereas here, every place indoor is heated. So I find that when I go back home, if I go back home in winter, I'm actually colder.
So I just have a couple of questions that have come through. So one of the attendees has asked, just see here. Okay, there's a few here. All right. if you are a corporate leader, not necessarily a tech company, you may have a lot of data, but you don't know how to start an AI strategy. Can the Canadian research institutes like Factor, MI, and Mila help?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's exactly part of what they do as part of their, they all have engagement departments, and they work exactly on this type of stuff. So some examples are, they'll bring in their industry partners and tell them about risk that's happening. They'll bring in the industry partners and basically probe them on what kind of problems do you have unrelated to AI. And then based on their expertise, they can tell them, okay, this is a problem that you can target with AI. And then they also do courses. So for example, they do executive training, meaning that, you know, you're a CEO of a company or some executive at a company, and you like, there's this AI thing, I don't understand it. How do I get like some understanding of it? And this is exactly what these programs are meant to do.
So just to maybe clarify for those that don't know much about the AI Research Institute. So there's three main ones, right? So we have AMI, or Amy, is that how it's pronounced?
Amy.
So the Alberta Machine Intelligence Institute, that's at the University of Alberta in Edmonton. That's one of the top 3 institutes focused on deep learning. That aims to enhance understanding, innovation, and machine intelligence. We also have Mila, which I think is based in Montreal, correct? Yeah. It's a partnership between Université de Montréal and McGill University. Right. And then the Factor Institute, which is probably the most famous outside of Canada, which is the Centre of Toronto's AI ecosystem. Yes. And what about CIFAR, so the Canadian Institute for Advanced Research? How are they helping companies scale up and establish a presence?
Right. I think what I know is mostly through funding of different research initiatives that then can, you know, funnel back to industry, as well as organizing these cohorts of research exchanges that are happening. So maybe you know more, but I think the funding is the big thing that CIFAR, the funding and the opportunities for research to continue, because at the end of the day, if you want industry to benefit from AI, you have to continue pushing on the research front of things, right? And so you need to be funded in order to do that, because it's an entire ecosystem. You cannot just stop doing the fundamental research piece.
No, absolutely. And actually funding is one of the top questions that a lot of businesses ask. How easy is it for AI companies to get funding, whether it's from government, whether it's from the big corporates, or from angel investors or VCs? And is that funding coming internationally, or is a lot of the investors based in Canada, from your experience? You may not have the answer to this, but.
Actually, so there's a bunch of things here. So in terms of investment, there's a lot of activity in terms of angel investing and venture capital funds that are operating in Canada, or international ones that are investing in Canadian ones. And all the big, like I'm familiar with some of the big US ones, and they all have very active investments in Canada, because it's considered a very promising and also proven place, especially for AI heavy type of companies. And then another thing I think you were asking about, oh yeah, so in terms of taxes, I think Canada has a very favorable corporate tax. I think it's one of the lowest in the G7, if not the lowest. And then there are incentives, government incentives for tax-based, so tax-based incentives, like if you're doing work that is R&D, and anything AI is effectively almost always that, then you get additional, tax-related credits. And I know these programs firsthand, because I've had to fill in the forms, to get they're called SHRED credits. So these are some examples that I'm familiar with.
And you've never had any major issues in terms of attracting talent. There is a good steady flow of talent that's coming through the doors regularly in Canada. So that's allowing you to grow your operations at Uber, but also the AI sector as a whole, because obviously talent, money, those are two things that go together. So you say that you have a good steady flow of talent.
Yeah, people coming to universities, then doing internships and then graduating, and then you're allowing them basically the opportunity to stay here. So it's kind of like a win-win situation. I wouldn't say it's trivial, but I don't think hiring tech talent is trivial anywhere in the world. But I would be a lot more worried if I was trying to, to set shop in a different place in terms of being able to attract talent, and especially because you can because there are so many things that make it favorable for people to say move here if they're moving internationally.
Right. Well, I've got another question that's come through. So someone has a company that's much smaller than Uber, Facebook, or and Samsung. Can you speak to the AI? Sorry, it's just disappeared. How would a SME company scale up its business in Canada if they're not a big powerhouse firm?
So we have a lot of, I think we have a lot of this in the city. So we have smaller companies, smaller startups. They first of all, they have access to, say, the engineering talent through, the Waterloo internships and so on. They have access to local communities through meetups that are very active and engaged in the city, and then that's where people kind of try to share knowledge. And I mean, later today, I think I'm doing a presentation to this TAN Canada group of people in machine learning and big data and so on, and kind of sharing some of my experience about scaling up in a research engineering team in Canada. So I feel like there is a lot of these types of engagement opportunities. And then again, you can always partner, even as a small company, with one of these research institutes and the programs that they offer. And they have different levels of sponsorship, or like how, exactly what kind of services they provide for free, what kinds are like in kind for being a sponsor. And they realize that there are different levels and different financial abilities. And so they cater it to different sizes as well.
Yeah, it seems a nurturing environment because you have so many AI startups that are based in Toronto. So that community, I think, is very important. So you say there is a lot to offer for AI SMEs that want to be based out in Canada. I have one more question that's come through. Hopefully you can answer this. Are there some cities or clusters that focus on different industries across Canada? The person said that they've heard about gaming and computer vision, for example, that's based in Vancouver. Are there other hubs for medtech or fintech in Canada, for example?
Yeah, so there are, so first of all, I would encourage you to watch the presentation, because in the presentation, I kind of go more in detail through the different places and different sectors. In the prairies, we have a lot of agriculture related focus and kind of heavy industry related focus. Automotive is a big one for Ontario and Quebec. We have some of the ocean related work being done in Nova Scotia. And for fintech, I mean, Toronto is a big hub for fintech for sure. Some of my best friends one of my best friends is the CTO, a woman leader CTO at a local fintech company called Wave. So, and I know of a few more. So for fintech, and for medtech, again, well, it's a different story altogether, but the health system in Canada is very interesting, and of course we have good healthcare, but it's also centralized per province, and so there's a lot of data and a lot of collaboration between the hospitals and research institutes. And then there are, like, some of my friends have startups that are related to AI for medical. Like, there's actually a lot of that, like a lot of the companies I sponsor, I mentor, and some success stories coming out of Canada for doing AI for anything from clinical trials, drug discovery, and so on. And now with COVID, it's actually been really intense, like the amount of people that are trying to build technology very, very quickly through applying AI to the problem space.
Yeah, and all the industries that you've mentioned will be driven by AI innovation at some point. I think we've now reached our time limit. Thank you so much for your candid conversation, Inmar. It's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you. I've learned so much about the AI ecosystem in Canada. It's been fantastic speaking with you. It's now my pleasure to introduce Neelu Baroon. She's the Executive Director of the Consider Canada Cities Alliance, CCCA. The CCCA unites 12 of Canada's largest municipal regions and works with national and international networks of partners to make Canada the preferred location for foreign investment and trade. Neelu has a wealth of experience in both the private and public sectors and has a deep understanding of what companies are looking for when considering investment abroad. She's here today representing Canadian municipalities from coast to coast and can demonstrate how Canadian cities can assist AI investors. Please join me in welcoming Neelu.
Thank you, Georgia, and thank you, Enmar, for that wonderful overview and presentation of the AI ecosystem in Canada. I'm not going to spend any time speaking about why Canada, because I think you have both covered it really well. So now that you as investors and companies have heard why the many great reasons of why Canada and why you should consider Canada as your next investment destination, the CCCA is here to provide you with some local resources. Some of the points that Enmar had mentioned, I noted ease of doing business in Canada, the top talent. We have one of the best educated, highly educated workforce in the globe. Immigration, our progressive immigration policies, such as the global skills strategy. And I want to note that our CCCA membership that is a network of investment promotion and economic development agencies are referral partners for that program. The quality of life, the diversity we have here, it's quite prevalent with your two speakers being from different nationalities. I was born in Iran, immigrated here as a teenager, Enmar from Israel, and you will certainly find that kind of diversity in all of the cities across the country. And finally, of course, the AI landscape here. And we have some of the top researchers, the fathers of AI, the fathers and mothers of AI located here in Canada. I think the last point that Enmar had mentioned was of the best advice is engaging with your local community. And that is what CCCA members are here to do. Our members span from the East Coast at the Atlantic all the way to the West Coast at the Pacific. We represent upwards of 85% of new GDP growth in Canada. Some of the members, I'm going to give them a quick shout out that are on the line today, and I am happy to facilitate these introductions. And of course, the team at the High Commission in London. We have cities of Ottawa, Halifax, Winnipeg, Waterloo, Hamilton, Vancouver, Toronto, Quebec City, and Calgary on the line, and they are here to assist you with your investment needs. So quickly, just highlighting what is it that these members do exactly. We are a concierge service for you. We work very, very closely with the federal government, with Global Affairs Canada, domestically here, and of course internationally with our friends such as the High Commission, and with Invest in Canada, that is the national organization that helps promote and markets Canada. In terms of investment supports, we assist in developing a business case for your next investment project, information and advice on doing business in Canada, strategic market intelligence on your specific industries. And of course, when you are ready to come, and hopefully we can go back to the normalcy of travel, when you're ready for site visits, we are here to assist you as well. And we are shifting to the new way of doing business and trying to do more virtual site visits. So please stay tuned for that. And we are, of course, your key contact with academic, private industry. If you need information on tapping funding resources or shred tax credits, as Enmar had mentioned, our teams across the different regions and cities are here to help you. So I won't take up any more of the time. I think I'm really pleased to be with you here today. And myself and the team at Consider Canada, and of course, the team at the High Commission in London are here to help you as you consider Canada for your next investment destination. Thank you.
All right, I think it's over to me then to try and close off today's session. let me start with some big thank yous. Thank you to Inmar and Georgia for being a fabulous moderator. Inmar, for your inspirational remarks. It's great for us to hear of someone who came to Canada by choice, who stayed despite the weather, as you say, and who has really become a leader in your both geographic community, but also your in the AI world. I'm just so impressed by the work that you're doing, and the level of ambition and optimism that you really bring for the industry, and your willingness to be part of these kind of conversations and put yourself out there. I was saying before we joined everyone with Georgia that I had a chance to watch one of your videos about autonomous vehicles and how they are really key to Uber's future. And you just make what could be otherwise quite technical or complex topics really accessible for people. So I think that's a huge gift you have. So thank you so very much for being part of this. And Georgia, you really drew that conversation out to really focus on strengths, which I think is really important for people who are considering potential AI investments in Canada. And Nilu, I think you did a fantastic kind of wrap up there, pointing out how your organization can work with any company, anybody who is actually thinking about Canada as a location, and really connecting them on the local level to all of those assets as a concierge. As I think Inmar mentioned, there are going to be more detailed presentations available after this from Inmar and Georgia, with more content information than they were able to provide in this webinar format. So I really encourage you to have a look at those. We are going to circulate them after this webinar, and I hope you've become persuaded through the course of this that there really are tremendous areas of opportunity in Canada for collaborations and partnerships with AI companies and with researchers in Canada, right from the research component, as Inmar said, all the way through to production and application to real business challenges and real business solutions. So if any of you have questions or you'd like more information about how your company could benefit from a Canadian capability in this area, let me suggest to you that we have, in addition to the network that Nilu mentioned of at the city level, we have a network of trade commissioners, which are Government of Canada trade employees who are both across Canada, but also located in our embassies around the world, in North America and across Europe. And this team of trade commissioners really is available to help you to pathfind, to answer your questions and give you information. And that includes, of course, my fantastic team here in London at the High Commission. And you've been given, as part of your registration information, contact information for Leslie Venon, who is part of the Trade Commissioner team here in London. So I really encourage you to reach out. We'd be delighted to help you, to work with you, to figure out how your business can develop the business case and the proposals for why Canada now, and working in partnership as well with Nilu and representatives of our various cities across the country. Nous serions vraiment heureuses de vous appuyer et vous aider à élaborer vos analyses de rentabilisation si vous envisagez le Canada en partenariat avec Nilu et des représentants de nos différentes villes partout de Canada. So this brings an end to our webinar today. I want to thank really again all of our very distinguished speakers who made this, I think, such a valuable and rich conversation, and also to you, our guests, who've taken time out of your day to join us. In the COVID era, I think there's a lot of competition for time and attention in the Zoom, webinar, WebEx, my team space, but I hope that you found this a really valuable opportunity to hear from people who've really made a big bet on Canada and for whom it's really paying off. Alors, ça conclut notre webinaire aujourd'hui. Merci encore à nos éminents intervenants qui ont vraiment donné beaucoup de valeur à nos discussions aujourd'hui, et à vous, nos invités, pour le temps que vous nous avez consacré aujourd'hui. Je sais qu'il y a beaucoup de compétition, dans le monde aujourd'hui pour votre attention et je suis tellement heureuse que vous avez accepté de nous rejoindre pour cette session aujourd'hui. So yes, we embrace diversity. We are an inclusive society and multilingual, just in case you missed that point. Thank you again to our panelists, to everybody who helped organize this session, and to our guests who have joined us this afternoon. It's been a real pleasure to be with you. Thank you very, very much.